Dear guests, welcome to the Watcher Poll. My guest today is Ivan Delibasic, former foreign policy advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia. There are many interesting topics that we're going to touch upon ahead of the European elections taking place this weekend across the EU member states. Ivan, thank you very much for being today with us.
Thanks for having me.
I would like to start with one topic which hasn't been very high on the agenda in the previous mandate, and that topic is basically enlargement. And ask you, where do you see enlargement on the agenda of the next EU Commission and EU institutions overall?
Cheers. I mean, this is something that I feel is almost a legacy policy topic in Brussels. This is something that in a hype of excitement we proclaimed 20 plus years that we're going to have the new wave of enlargement. We just celebrated 20 years of the Big Bang enlargement. And when you think about what has happened since then, yes, we had Bulgaria and Romania, yes, we had Croatia, but then for the rest of it, it kind of stalled. And the notion of enlargement as a priority has been going up and down and up and down, depending on the problems that are happening in the areas that we're considering to be potential enlargement countries. Now that notion has also expanded, right? What we consider from the Western Balkans, now we're also thinking that Eastern Partnership countries are being the candidates for enlargement, which is great. Because it creates a positive sentiment on one hand. On the other, it also creates a level of expectations among the people to actually start delivering on that. And this is something that, politically speaking, is, well, virtually impossible to deliver. There is, as many folks would say, there is simply not an appetite among the political leadership to do that, both in Brussels, but especially in member states. And I read recently that folks are hyping the next commissioner for the enlargement and enlargement portfolio as something that could be important in the next mandate. I'm a little bit skeptical about that, simply because, well, we have pivotal elections in Germany next year. We have arguably even more pivotal elections in France in 27, and the policy portfolio of enlargement will largely depend on those two things, and I don't think that anyone is really willing to stake their reputation on something at this stage, especially knowing that the promises, for varying reasons, right? I mean, I'm not saying that countries in question actually fulfill the criteria, Copenhagen criteria, and deserve to be members, but the very pace of development of negotiations and especially political signals being sent are something that is creating a little bit of a pause in population. So in that sense, I hope that there will be a little bit more attention. Certainly, I mean, it's a very low bar, because in the last 5 years, no one was talking about the enlargement. Like the closest to that we got talking about Ukraine and giving them a clear perspective, and then Moldova and Georgia as well.
Recently.
But recently. And it was more of a reaction to the geopolitical situation and the aggression of Russia and war in Ukraine, then it was actually coming from the genuine sentiment, oh, by the way, we want this. We need this. This is good for everyone. No, it was sort of like a Band-Aid that we put on this. It was good because it kind of sorted out short-term things, but long-term, we need to start thinking of how to deliver. And the expanded talks about multi-level or multi-layered EU, like the onion EU, in which certain countries will stay attached but not full members, that might not work. That would probably create a lot of frustration. We've already seen that in Northern Macedonia, for instance. This is where, I mean,
they recently had elections. Do you think that things are going to change significantly, or?
Well, the blockade of Northern Macedonia is a political issue that is stemming from pretty much the same core reasons, and it's just changing the places where the bottlenecks seem to appear, again, for the sake of great people who live there, I genuinely hope that there will be a progress, at least to start with negotiations proper, because that does make a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
you're coming from Croatia. I worked on EU integrations in Serbia. Two cases have arguably different
True.
points of departure and different points in which we're now, but you can tell that there are certain elements which are being improved, and in case of Croatia, significant. So, but at the end of the day, it's the destination of membership that drives this process politically in the first place, because there are some difficult things that need to be done in the process, things that cause some disturbances in the social fabric. But if you know that you're doing it for something that is objectively a great thing for your country and ultimately on your personal level for yourself, then you're more willing to accept it. Right now, I don't think that anyone credibly can tell, either in those countries or in Brussels, oh yeah, guys, you're actually going to become members at the end of the process.
Yeah. But we've seen, and I mean, during this campaign, von der Leyen was saying and stating officially that enlargement is basically, as you said, also the fuel of the European Union. I mean, EU itself was enlarging in different circles and so on, and especially now in the light of the war in Ukraine, basically, and the perspective that has been given to them, also the status that Bosnia and Herzegovina was granted, and expectations are also high very now for the June Council, whether someone is going to officially start negotiations or not. But my question would be, let's look from another perspective. Whom do you think is going to join first? Let's not talk about the time frame, but which country, according to you, could be the next EU member state?
So from exactly the point of promises being given and therefore promises needing to be kept, the easiest way for the enlargement process to nominally at least stay alive is to accept Montenegro. The country is tiny. It's 600,000 people. Economy is not robust, so it's easy to also integrate. Euro is already in place.
Yeah.
Also, arguably, the most advanced country in terms of negotiations and implementation of the acquis. So, if we really want to deliver something and make a signal also to the others, hey guys, the process is alive, you just need to do the things, that would be Montenegro. The other option, and that's a slightly more controversial one, is Moldova, but only under the premise that it actually joins Romania.
Okay, but chances are very low, or not existing. Yeah.
Because for the moment, I genuinely don't see big political appetite to have a significant enlargement. I think that even having Montenegro as a country joining the EU would be more symbolic than anything, and it would be more a long-term anchoring of the policy of the enlargement as a long-term priority, giving the message to everyone else, guys, there is hope, like the message of hope, basically.
But do you think that would be also very important? Because when you mentioned Montenegro, there are many rumors, evidences, as someone wants to say it, of very high Russian influence there. And in the light of the war and priorities for the European Union, would that be the right signal also to do it?
No, absolutely. I mean, look, Russian investments in Montenegro are substantial. The Russian footprint, even like not even, I'm not talking even state level investments, but individuals purchasing real estate in Montenegro. It is a significant chunk of their economy, whichever way you spin it. So by default, there is a certain level of political influence. You might remember several years ago there was sort of somewhat of a coup attempt that was allegedly also supported by Russians. Now, we've seen coups happening in other parts of the world with direct Russian influence. So in order to also send the message that there is a political stability that comes with EU membership, and that there is a recognition of the work done by not just authorities but also people of a certain country, I think that it would send a massively positive message, not just to Montenegro, but in particular to the rest of the Western Balkans region, because they arguably have the laggards in terms of the enlargement, and that comes both from internal political resistance, but also from the lack of this clear perspective of membership. So either way you slice it, it would be, and also I think that internally here in Brussels, and in particular when we talk about Brussels, I mean within the Council itself, it would be a good litmus test to see if we can put this tiny little thing through, sort of like open
the door
slightly, and then see where it leads.
Yeah, but when we talk about everything what the EU is doing, and we also had the decision and political agreement reached in April between the Parliament and the Council on a 6 billion reform and growth facility for the Western Balkans. Basically, this is underpinning the reform and growth plan, which was proposed already in November 2023. How would you comment on that? I mean, this is lots of money, and especially in this situation for Europe, not everyone was happy about it, but at the same time, if invested right, it can also help these countries to come closer to the EU.
Absolutely. I mean, I like that you started with the timeline, because the very timeline, including proposing it in November of 23, which is like 7 months before the EU elections, it means that it came as an afterthought. I mean, there was a huge facility for Ukraine, which was absolutely necessary for different reasons. And then this came as a balancing act because, they realized, oh my God, we're talking all the time about the Eastern Partnership and their perspective, and now we're dedicating money for that. What about the Western Balkans? They are slipping behind. And yes, as you said, there is significant foreign influence there. So I think that this was necessary to plug in some of the leaking holes in the messaging that is sent to the region. When it comes to the money itself, it is going to come as a lifeline to many countries there. It is certainly something that can be used really well and also bring returns to the EU
itself.
Because don't forget, I mean, the investments stemming from these kind of things all usually come with a clause that you need to employ technology and expertise and stuff like that. So it is not the money given, it is money invested, indeed. Now, how much it is going to help those countries move closer to the EU? Absolutely, if invested right. For instance, the biggest challenges, arguably, for outside of the political realm, which is a story in itself, but policy-wise, the biggest challenges come with environmental applications and environmental policies and the level of standards which are nowhere near the EU standards. So this is something that this envelope can certainly help. How much it would help in terms of changing the mindset? I have been having this issue of EU money being spent in those countries without clarity that is coming from the EU. You maybe have a plaque this big saying this bridge was built with the support of the EU, whereas whether it's Russia or China, they built the bridge. And that bridge has flags of China, and you call it a Chinese bridge in Belgrade, or you call it a Chinese auto route, motorway in Montenegro. We also
need to communicate better and more in a clearer way. What is it that where is this money coming from? It is coming also at a moment where you have
trade-offs.
Yeah,
So
of
you're
course.
not giving that money because, well, there's like 6.5 billion lying around, so we're just going to, it's either that or burning it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
so
Clear.
this is important as well.
Clear. But when we talk about communication, we have to touch upon the elections which are ahead of us. And what would be your expectations for the final results? Where do you see changes? Also, when it comes to the member states and parties in the member states, but also when it comes to the composition of the political groups in the European Parliament.
Quite a few questions within that one, so I'll try to target each one separately. First things first, I do expect the Greens overall to do better than the polls tend to suggest, notably because we over rely on polls. Their electorate is very difficult for pollsters to reach. They tend to turn out in decent numbers, and I think that the motivation there is always present. So I think that they'll do slightly better. I mean, you've seen what happened yesterday in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
for starters. So they tend to overperform their polling. I also have a feeling that the S&D group and the Socialists might do slightly less well than what has been expected.
Expectations is more or less one seat less
Yeah,
than before.
yeah. So I think that they will probably end up around losing at least around 10-ish compared to where we sit. But let's see. I mean, it also factors in various other topics. In terms of the composition of the parliament itself, I think that there will be quite a few non-inscripts at the beginning. I expect this period between Monday and the 16th of July to be very intense in terms of poaching independents and individual members from different political parties, especially those who are entering for the first time. I think that the Liberals, so Renew and ALDE, would possibly face a little bit of a challenge in forming the group, or at least maintaining the coherence and dealing with the internal dynamics within the group. I don't think that the AfD would manage to piece together their group, not because of the numbers, but partly because I don't think that there would be 7 different countries represented. And even if they, by some sort of engineering, let's call it engineering, manage to get the required numbers, there is still a question of group actually behaving like a group,
Yeah.
which is a relatively new prerequisite, I think, stemming from the EFDD existence. So I think that this is probably going to be an issue, and also the idea of Sarah Wagenacht of creating this additional left group in the parliament would probably also fizzle out relatively quickly, and then we'll have a lot of people moving around.
Free radicals.
Free radicals, yeah.
But what we can expect from Fidesz? Fidesz left the EPP group in this mandate. There are many talks whether they're gonna join Meloni and ECR, or they are gonna go with Marine Le Pen. What would you expect?
Left the EPP, yeah. Some would say that they were kindly asked to leave as well.
They're not there.
They're not there, whichever way you spin it. But I mean, for Orban himself, and therefore for Fidesz, the situation right now is just fine. I mean, he thrives on the fact that there is no major European alignment, that he's still one man against the Brussels machinery. Joining a group with itself means that, okay, you accept the fact that there is an existence of structure. And in that scenario, I would expect Fidesz, if they're joining someone, to actually join ECR. Because in that case you have 3 prime ministers, Italian, Czech and Hungarian. You have very close alignment with Fico, well, all things considered, in Slovakia. And you're expecting also Babiš to become the prime minister in Czechia. So you have a little bit of a more robust, again, Visegrad grouping with the ECR that traditionally has positions which are not terribly dissimilar, bar for Russia. I think that PiS losing the elections in Poland also helps with this integration a little bit. And also the power in numbers is significant. Now, the thing is that puts Meloni in a situation where she needs to decide whether or not she wants to remain on the fringes, because accepting Orban at this stage would mean that the cordon sanitaire stays to the same degree that there was while PiS was in power. For the moment, ECR has a chance of playing somewhere on the edges and outskirts of the governing majority. With Fidesz, it's clearly
There.
an opposition to the rest of it, but it's a powerful, significant one. Le Pen's move to expel AfD from the ID group was clearly made to give Orban a landing ground in case that things with ECR don't go well. And by the way, I mean, Orban himself did say that he would prefer joining Meloni and ECR. So that's another point that leads me to. However, it doesn't mean that ECR would accept him. In that case, ID might be also a credible option, especially since they're governing now in the Netherlands. Arguably, they would do rather well in Austria the next elections. They're governing in Slovakia, which is an important partner for Hungary. Arguably, Le Pen could also do rather well at the presidential elections in 27. So that's not, institutionally speaking, that's not an outside option for him. And for the time being, he gets to be their voice in the council, in the UCO, which in itself helps. Now there is also the presidency component, Hungarian presidency taking place now. So
Let's see.
exactly. Let's see. I think that it might even take a bit of time for Fidesz to. They might start on the outside and then.
Yeah, because none of the group, ECR nor ID, is under pressure in order to be formed. They're gonna collect 7 member states representatives easily. And be there. This is not an even issue currently. Thank you very much, Ivan. This was very interesting to hear. Let's see what Sunday is going to bring to us, and how the next mandate of the European institutions is going to look alike. Dear guests, thank you very much for watching another episode of The Watcher Poll, and stay tuned, more is to come.